Some books you just read, but then there are other books, the ones that kind of read you. They get under your skin and make you question things you thought you knew. Today, we're diving into one of those, the Hagakure. It's a famous and pretty controversial guide to the samurai mindset from way back in the 18th century. And honestly, it puts forward a philosophy that's so different from how we think today, it can be, well, pretty unsettling. So let's try to get our heads around this warrior's paradox together.
I mean, just listen to this quote. Every morning, be sure to meditate yourself into a trance of death. That is not some throwaway line. According to the Hagakure, that's the core spiritual exercise for a samurai. It's the absolute center of a warrior code that found the meaning of life not in trying to save it, but in being totally, completely ready to throw it away at a moment's notice.
So, to even begin to understand this, we've got to unravel what I'm calling the warrior's paradox. And let's be clear, this isn't about being depressed or having some kind of death wish. No, this is a really complex psychological tool, and it was designed for a very, very specific purpose.
Okay, so the core idea comes from a man named Yamamoto Tsunetomo. He was a samurai retainer who later became a monk, and he's the one who said these words: "The way of the samurai is found in death." Now, to us, that just sounds bleak, right? Almost nihilistic. But for Tsunetomo, this was the absolute key to unlocking a higher state of being, a state of perfect, unhesitating action.
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Why death? I mean, why not glory or victory or just survival? The answer, as we're about to see, reveals a worldview where your own ego, with all its fears and all its desires, is actually the biggest thing standing in the way of doing your duty.
All right, so let's get into the mechanics of it. How does this mindset of death actually work? The whole key is to understand the mental state that thinking about death is supposed to create. It's not really about ending a life, it's about completely transforming one.
Here's the crucial part. Imagine a warrior who gets up every single morning and truly accepts that, for all intents and purposes, he's already dead. What's left to be afraid of? The fear of pain, the fear of losing, the fear of failing, it all just evaporates. And what you're left with is this incredibly clear, decisive mind that can act with total freedom right here in the present moment.
And this slide just illustrates that contrast perfectly. The Hagakure talks about the calculating man as basically a coward. And why? Well, because his mind is always running the numbers, right? A constant list of pros and cons. Life is a gain, death is a loss. So every single decision he makes is frozen by his fear of that ultimate loss. But the samurai, by deciding he's dead from the start, he gets to step outside that whole petty equation. He's not acting out of self-interest anymore, he's acting from pure purpose.
And this all builds up to a state that the book calls shinigurui, or the mad death frenzy. Now, this doesn't mean just being reckless. It's the ultimate expression of a mind that's been set free from hesitation. The book literally says you should just frenetically throw yourself at your enemy with the intention of being cut down. In that state, the warrior becomes this unstoppable force of will.
But this whole mindset of death thing, it isn't just for the battlefield. No, its most profound use was in service. It created a type of loyalty that is, well, it's almost impossible for us to even imagine today.
This quote, wow, it's such a powerful piece of psychological advice. It's not about being paranoid and thinking an enemy is behind every corner. No, it's about stepping into the world each day having already made the ultimate sacrifice in your own mind. By killing yourself from the outset, you exist in this constant state of readiness to serve your master because you're not weighed down by any thoughts of your own survival.
And in this way of thinking, your life just stops being your own personal property. It becomes a tool, an instrument for your Lord's will. Every action, every thought, every single breath is for that service. The already dead mindset is the engine that makes that kind of absolute, total devotion possible.
Because in the end, it all comes down to one purpose, single-minded service, one focus, the will of the master, one path, totally unburdened by the fear of death. It's the ideal of Ichinen, what you could call sheer, single-minded intent. Now, this philosophy, where honor and life are so deeply tangled up with death, finds its most solemn, its most formal expression in the ritual that has both fascinated and, frankly, horrified the West for centuries: seppuku. Okay, so first things first. Seppuku was not just suicide. It was a deeply, deeply formal ceremony. It was a samurai's last chance to show his courage and his control, and by doing so, preserve or even restore his honor if he had failed, been shamed, or was about to be captured. It was the final act of service to his name and to his family.
And it was a performance, really, with a full cast. You had the principal, the one who had to make that agonizing cut himself. Then you had the kaishaku, or the second. This was a trusted friend, a comrade, whose grim job was to deliver a clean mercy blow to end the suffering. His skill was everything. If he messed it up, it was a lifetime of disgrace. And finally, you had the ometsuki, the official observers, who were there to make sure the whole ritual was done with the proper gravity and decorum.
If you really want to get inside this mindset, just listen to these last words from a samurai named Imazato Jinzaemon. As he was preparing for seppuku, he took a bite of something and then he stopped and whispered this. In his final moments on earth, his biggest concern wasn't death, wasn't pain. It was the risk that a simple reflex might be unbecoming. That's the level of composure, the dedication to perfect form that the way demanded.
And that just tells you everything, doesn't it? Death itself got transformed. It wasn't a failure, it wasn't an end. It was the final and most important performance. For a man who had lived every single day as if he were already dead, this was simply the next logical and honorable step.
So, what are we supposed to do with all of this today? When you step back from the world of feudal Japan, the philosophy of the Hagakure is still this massive, provocative riddle. When we strip it down to its bones, we find these really powerful core ideas. It's a radical way to conquer fear. It's a path to total freedom of action by just getting your ego out of the way. It offers this source of profound purpose through an unwavering sense of duty. And yeah, it's a completely radical take on death itself.
And look, of course this code is extreme. It was born in a very specific time for a violent warrior class. But its starkness, it kind of forces us to look in the mirror, How much are our own lives, our own decisions, dictated by a fear of loss? And what does it really, truly mean to live with purpose?
And that, I think, leaves us with this one big question. In our world today, where we do everything we can to preserve and prolong life, what could a philosophy that's centered on embracing death possibly teach us about how to truly live? The warrior's paradox is that maybe, just maybe, by looking squarely at the end, we find the very best reason to begin.